what I do when I work with my own mentees. And I figured out they are most of the time asking me, at least at the beginning of the mentee relationship, more or less the same questions. So what's our agenda today? I'll first tell you a little bit about my own background so that you can form an opinion if what I'm telling you makes also sense in your context. In my normal mentee relationships, I give advice based on my own experience, that is mentoring. But you have to decide what applies to you. And so we'll talk about that. Then I'll give you tips and tricks how to write better resumes. This is particularly focused at people who are early in their careers or just about to graduate from university. We'll talk about how to ace the technical interview, what interviews look for, and how you can be really successful at this stage of getting a job. And then we'll talk about career growth and what it takes and techniques, tips and tricks to get to staff and beyond. And at the end, I've brought plenty of time so that we can also answer your questions. So about me, my name is Florian Noeding. I'm a principal security architect at Adobe. I work on product security strategy, and lots of other product security things. So the theme of my talk is all product security, but you can generalize this, of course, to other areas in security. I work on supply chain security, memory safety. I evangelize for security so that we get more investment to fix all the security issues that exist. I'm an active mentor both inside of Adobe and outside. I'm a speaker and also a trainer at conferences. And for B-Side San Francisco, I'm on the program review committee, where we look at the call for proposals. And very important, I do have a life outside of security and work too. So don't get the idea I'm doing this nonstop every waking hour. I've got a wife, two daughters, spend a lot of time with my family. I make music on the side. I go rock climbing nowadays, only indoors, but so I bake bread and a bunch of other stuff. I'm employed at Adobe, but all opinions are my own. And the first thing that I want to tell you is a career is really a 40-plus year-long journey. And what you believe you want to do as your next step is not necessarily what you will do in the long term. So let me tell you a little bit about my own background. And we'll start when I joined university. In 2004, I decided to study econometrics. Physics, where they removed the most advanced stuff and added the basics of how to run a business, and economics to it, because I was very sure I didn't want to end up in a research organization. So I figured that would be quite good. And I really wanted to understand how our universe, how our world works. And physics was the best way to do that. And a little bit naively in retrospect, I figured I can already write software. I had been writing software in 7 years at that point. I don't need to study computer science. So I did that. And I spent a whole lot of time next to studying physics, investing time into computer science stuff, writing software, selling software, taking part in programming competitions and stuff like that. In 2010, I finished the studies. So you may already notice I took a little bit longer than usual. Oh, by the way, a diploma is the equivalent of a bachelor's plus a master's in Germany. 2010, I joined a startup building firewall devices that were based on Linux, and I became a C++ software engineer. Within about a year, I was promoted to be the manager of the backend team. And I was the manager of 14 people. I was the head of the backend organization. And I did that for 3 years, then lost that job. The startup wasn't doing too well. And I joined Adobe in 2014. And I also figured I don't want to be an engineering manager anymore. I'm really a techie. I want to do techie stuff. So I became a software engineer again. I got this job mostly because of one of my side projects. I was creating something similar to what you all, or many of you probably know as Docker. Didn't get successful, just a proof of concept, kind of. And I convinced the hiring manager with the side project that I would be the right fit. In this job, I worked on developer experience. The team was building cloud software, the backend of all of Creative Cloud and Document Cloud Simplified, where all the customer data is stored. But they had a challenge. They could only deploy their solution once every 2 weeks all the way to production, if they were lucky. If we were unlucky, it took 4 or 6 weeks, and change kept accumulating, and it became more and more difficult. And together with my team and my product owner, we broke that down so that every engineer could deploy their service independently from development to staging to production any number of times a day. So that was revolutionary. We were so successful that management decided, well, we don't need a developer experience team for CI, continuous integration, and continuous delivery anymore. And right about that time, I was promoted to senior software engineer, and I figured out that security is exciting. So all the time before I was doing software engineering, I didn't know that I wanted to get into security. And a friend of mine worked on bug bounty programs next to his full-time job. And he told me how exciting it was to hack other people's products and on top of that get paid. He made a lot of cash. And I thought, I can do that too. That sounds fun. So I spent some time learning about security. I applied the things I knew from my own software experience. I knew C++, so I knew about memory safety vulnerabilities. And I helped a crypto chain prevent 51% attacks against their new crypto chain by fixing and identifying lots of memory safety vulnerabilities that were exploitable. I also started participating in a preview program of a crypto exchange, because crypto was all the rage already back then, and got access to their CI system because I worked on CI systems. I knew how that worked. Got access to their production cloud keys, told them about it, and then they decided to threaten to sue me. Luckily, they didn't, but I figured, let's maybe do that as a full-time job and get paid for it instead of doing the bug bounty hunting and private programs. And after a while, I joined Adobe's central security team. That was in 2019, the first time when I had a full-time security job. And within 3 years, I got promoted to principal security architect, and I now run a large part of Adobe's security strategy, and I influence basically the entire enterprise, how we think about certain things. So you see, based on my career journey, that I followed my curiosity. I really invested time into to get good at one thing and then take my next step. I didn't plan I had 10, 15, or however many years, I still have not mapped out my entire career. What I'll do by 2050 when I'll retire around the time frame, I have no idea. We'll see. I'm sure, because security is still super exciting to me, I will spend quite some more time there. Also based on this career, you can see I have an idea how to have rapid career growth. So let's get started. How can you write better resumes? And I've been a hiring manager, and I see a lot of resumes as part of my role to interview people. And one thing I notice is people write very generic resumes. If you apply for an analyst role, or a pen testing role, or maybe a more defensive product or application or operational security role, write 2 or 3 different applications. You usually apply to different companies anyway. So be more specific. Highlight the things that make you most useful to the company that should hire you in that specific role. And you can omit the things that don't matter. Then you can sharpen your profile, and you can really create the image in the hiring manager's mind that you are a great fit for such a role. The longer your career has been, the less useful this advice is, because eventually you get hired because you have lots of different experience. But at the beginning of your career, create really a clear picture. Do you want to be more on the offensive side, more on the defense side, or something else? And something else that I see very often is people just say, I did pen testing, especially if you participated in internships during your university time. They just said that. Did you lead them? Did you contribute to them? Did you just learn how to do it? Tell me more about your contribution level, your engagement in these things that you did. Also try to tell a story about the impact you had. So what worked better? Maybe when you wrote a pen test, you created very clear guidance to the teams that had to fix these findings. That sped up the time to resolution. Come up with things that matter. But be careful, there's a trap. If you just write, I reduced security risk by 33%, I'll probably not believe you. Simply because most companies are not at that maturity level where they can climb such a thing. So think about where did you make a difference. And for the graduates or soon-to-be graduates amongst you, your biggest challenge is you need to stand out, just like the guy in purple there in the middle. But from my perspective, when I look at a resume of you, typically you have 1 or 2 internships and you graduated from university. I don't care which one. They're all kind of good. Which means I now have a large stack of resumes and I have only 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 positions to give out. So do you want to leave it to chance? And when I talked about my own career journey, I told you that I got into bug bounty hunting and I demonstrated hands-on experience that I can find actual vulnerabilities that matter to companies by doing that. And if you want to have a better chance and you want to stand out, do side projects before you apply to jobs. Do bug bounty hunting, that is very difficult. I myself spent more than a month trying to find my first bug bounty that got accepted. That's painful. And it takes a lot of motivation to keep looking for stuff. You need to find out where to look. Because if you just go into the new programs where everyone is, too much competition. I went to the old programs that already became boring and looked for new functionality in these old programs. Then I found stuff. And then I got into crypto and that worked out pretty well. You can also compete in capture the flag contests. That's a little bit easier because you know that there is a vulnerability in bug bounty. You don't necessarily know that there is something. If you have a very specific job in mind, for example, as a security analyst in an incident response team, and you know they use Splunk or maybe another logging and search solution, and you take a usually free course that teaches you how to write queries for that better, that can help too. But now you're already optimizing for a very specific job. And I know in the current climate, it might be a little bit difficult because you likely have to write many applications. And finally, do software projects. Our scope is we secure software systems. It's all about software. You have to understand a little bit how software works. The more you understand how software works, the more of an advantage you have. And many people have 0 of these extra things. Have 1 or 2, it will make a world of a difference. So how can you ace the technical interview? And I've performed a couple hundred interviews so far. And within my organization, product security at Adobe, if you want to get a senior or staff level role, you have to get past me. I can tell you exactly what I'm looking for and what's important to me. And if you are a hiring manager who's good at security, you can also use the same techniques to figure out if your candidates are good. So it works both ways. So what do interviewers look for? What am I looking for? I want to know that you have technical skill. Obviously, you need to know your security basics. You need to also know a little bit about software engineering. And I want that you have empathy for my software engineers. Empathy not in the sense of, hey, I'm sorry, you have to fix this vulnerability, but empathy in the sense of, I know what I'm asking you. This is going to be expensive to implement, but I believe it is reasonable for the situation. So do you know what it costs the team to implement a content security policy to protect against cross-site scripting with defense and stuff? What it would cost them to fix all memory safety vulnerabilities in their old C++ code? What it would cost them to adopt any other tool? How can you reduce that cost? That kind of empathy. My interviews are not trivia quizzes. I want to have a real discussion with you, just like I would have a discussion here at a conference, certainly in a much tighter time frame, and we have to cover a lot more topics. But I'm looking at how you speak, because if your language is not nuanced and precise, but wishy-washy, your mental models in your head are probably wishy-washy too. And if I want you to talk to my software engineering teams, that won't happen. So you need to be precise. And of course, I level set. For graduates, I have very different expectations compared to somebody who has 5 to 10 years of experience or much more. I'm going to ask you questions to figure out how much potential you have. And for me, potential goes down to curiosity. Are you a lifelong learner? And curiosity and your interest in learning new stuff about security or software engineering or anything else. That's really what I'm looking for. Can you ask me questions too that are good? Can you solve a problem together with me? And a little bit behavioral stuff. But that is mostly for the managers who see if you're a good culture fit and if you have conflict resolution skills. But sometimes we may disagree in an interview, and then I'll get signal like that too. So how do I figure out if you are technically good? I want to figure out if you're like the guy that is ankle deep in the water and uses your favorite LLM to figure out the answers to whatever these questions are, or have you actually used Scuba Gear and did a deep dive? And I'm going to ask you about really security basics. Look at the job description. If you're going to do web application security, I will talk about cross-site scripting and SQL injection, maybe cross-site request forgery. If I talk about more embedded systems or desktop products built on C++, well, we'll talk memory safety for sure. And then I will ask you, what is X? What is cross-site scripting? I will ask you, why does cross-site scripting happen? And I want to know that you understand how vulnerable code looks like. Describes it to me. It's string concatenation, basically, string building, stuff like that. And these questions form a hierarchy from easiest to hardest. And if you don't know one of the upper ones, I won't ask the next ones. I'll just go to the next topic. Very fluidly. Most people don't even realize how quickly we move topics, and I'll try to see how deep I can go with you. I'll also ask you, how can you exploit it? For red teaming and penetration testers, I go more towards exploitation. For the defensive roles, I go more towards mitigation. And I want to know that you can actually do that you know what are the control characters. The differences between input sanitization, input validation, which is very generic, and output encoding. And I like to ask about edge cases, because anyone who is senior, I expect to know about edge cases and be able to tell my developers also how they can deal with these edge cases. So it really helps me level set where you are on a skill level basis. For cross-site scripting, I will probably ask you, what if you have a form field that needs to accept any input character, including the control characters? What do you do? How do you make that sure? How do you make sure that works correctly in a more complicated architecture where you have microservices that hand data from service to service? And it's output encoding, always. That makes it safe. And when I ask you about how to mitigate vulnerability at scale, I want to know that you can work together with the rest of the security organization. I ask typically two things. One is, does it matter that we fix cross-site scripting at scale? How can you figure that out? Do you know that you can talk to your vulnerability management organization, because they will have the data, to your bug bounty team, to your threat modelers and security reviewers? They can all tell you when these different things happen in the different phases of a security review. Can you work with your static analysis or dynamic analysis team, but you have, to prevent these things? Can you work with a platform team to fix root causes? How do you get buy-in? These are all interesting questions. And the deeper I can go in, the more areas, it tells me you have a lot of depth. That means curiosity. That means potential. I get a lot of signal out of these questions. And while we are discussing that, I'll just look at how you talk to me. And if you speak like that, or answer like that to the question, what is SQL injection? And say a SQL injection is when someone puts weird stuff into a box on a website, and then the website gets confused and does stuff it's not supposed to. It's bad, basically. Well, I'm telling that to my parents. They are non-technical. They get it. If you talk to a security expert or a software engineer like that, that's not what I want to see. I want to see something like this here. That you can really tell me a SQL injection vulnerabilities occurs when code and data and user control data are mixed before proper escaping of control characters. That gives me a lot to work with as an interview, because I will ask follow-up questions about these things. Do you know which control characters? And by the way, if you are being interviewed and you give me something like that, you can steer the interview, because I will try to get deeper with you. That's my goal. Really trace out the boundaries of your understanding. And then the consequence, it allows an adversary to fully or partially control your database and bypassing the application logic. So we can really talk about the stuff. That makes it interesting. This is my favorite question in the interview. I'll usually spend 20 or 30 minutes on this question to figure out if you can ask me questions too, if you can solve a problem together with me. I always preface it. You have to ask me questions. The question I'm going to ask you will be ill-defined, highly ambiguous. That is very intentionally. So pretend I'm not only the interviewer, but I'm a software engineer on the team you'll be working with. So you've been assigned to a team building a new company-wide login process. What do you do to make it secure enough? And I'll see if you can ask me questions first. Basically, what are we building would be a good first question, and creating an architecture diagram or something like that. Or do you directly start listing threats? And I noticed that the more junior folks they'll just start listing threats. That's not what I want here. I want that you slow down, think about it, and have a somewhat structured approach. I know in 20, 30 minutes in a stressful interview situation that is a little bit difficult. But I'll make sure to nudge you there. And with increasingly stronger nudges, I'll tell you, you have to ask me questions to solve this problem. We'll also be talking about how to balance the business velocity and ability to sell our products with security. And this question is quite perfect for that, because we can talk about password complexity and MFA. So do we expect our customers to have hardware MFA devices that they always have to carry around with them, very complex passwords? Or do we want to have a mostly frictionless login experience? What kind of tech stack suggestions to make? So I pointed there out, it's a company-wide login process that should signal to you this is kind of important to get security right. So we should probably have defense in depth against cross-site scripting. So will you recommend a framework that is secure by design, that makes it easy to implement content security policies on top of that? Or is it okay if I tell you the team choose jQuery? And I'm not looking for the right or the wrong answer. I'm looking how you break things down. And I never expect that you know everything. If I would be in the same situation, I don't know everything either. Let me repeat that to be really clear. I don't know everything either. But I know a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of depth in many areas. So that could work. And at the end, if time permits, we'll chat a little bit about how to prioritize all the things that we could do, because we can only do a couple of them, because budget for security is always limited. So how do we deal with it? At the end of the interview, I'm going to give you a little bit of time. Most interviewers do that actually, and they'll give you maybe five minutes to ask questions. And I'm always very disappointed if the candidate does not even have a single question to ask me. This tells me they are not really interested in the job. And that's sad, especially in a job market like at the moment. You're wasting a chance. If you don't know what to ask for, I can recommend you questions in 3 areas. Ask, what is the working culture here like? How do people give feedback to each other? Do I have to come into the office or not? That's more a hiring manager, not a technical question. How is it to work with the product teams? Is security important for them? In the area of performance, how will my success be measured? It's one of my favorite questions. Or what are the challenges? What kind of challenge does need to be solved? What makes working here easy? What makes it hard? Or I like to ask people nowadays, it's just my managers, if you had a magic wand, what one thing would you change? Leads to fantastic conversations. You'll leave a lasting impression if you do stuff like that. So now let's talk about how to advance your career. You've got the job, and now you want to grow the career ladder. For that, we first need to define the different career levels, and this will not map cleanly to your organization. It doesn't map to Adobe either. So you have junior, you have senior, staff, and principal. And the first dimension which I look at is technical skill. And juniors have a little bit, they still have more stuff to learn. Seniors have a lot, and then it starts to top out. So seniors are basically the people who get most of the work done on a technical level. And on staff and even principal, it's not that much more than the typical senior. I don't know more than most seniors. Maybe a little bit here and there. Maybe I'm broader, but generally I'm not better at tech than the senior folks. The key difference is the higher you go on this level, especially starting at staff and principal, your sphere of influence grows. As a junior, you basically have zero influence. You get told what to do. You still need to learn the job after all. That's fine. As senior, you work with your team and with your manager, maybe a little bit with your director, to set a little bit of direction, and you make the technical decisions within your team. You really define the quality of work within the team. At staff, the expectation is you work across the organization. Don't be confused. It doesn't mean as a security, you usually work across the larger company anyway. That's part of your job. But you really need to work across the security organization and influence more teams how they should be doing the work. And as a principal, you probably influence a whole lot across the enterprise. One thing I forgot. You move from following to leading, the higher up you go, but you never stop following. So I still have to follow what my VP wants, what my CISO, my SVP wants, and so on. Following never stops. Even if you're your own boss, you still have to follow what your customers want or your board wants. Yeah. And the consequence of having more and more influence is you have less and less direct technical impact. So the junior and senior, what they do mostly is have this direct technical impact. And the seniors in an organization are really easy people that get these things done. I'm coming up with problems to solve. I don't get stuff done on that level. So you move from doing the work to really guiding the work. And you have impact via others, increasingly so. At staff, it's maybe half and half, but most of my impact is that I align teams and organizations to move roughly in the same direction, to coordinate them, to make sure we solve problems only once instead of multiple times across the organization. By telling them what is important to get them with the management chain. And my general recommendation is if you want to work towards staff or principal level, you need to become a specializing generalist. A generalist is somebody who can work on anything, so who's very broad. But if you have the ability to specialize in whatever is necessary, you can also get very, very deep. And I don't mean 2 years deep, maybe 5 years deep in a topic. The reason for that is simple. Most of you are probably working for companies where the average tenure is 3 to maybe 5 years. So you will be working anyway, many different organizations and with many different product teams and kinds of products across your careers. So you kind of need to be a generalist anyway. And honestly, how many companies are going to hire a crypto expert to build a new crypto library? You have only a bunch of crypto libraries. The general guidance is don't roll your own. So to become a very, very deep specialist is difficult. And so my talk is about this kind of stuff. There are, of course, always exceptions. So there are roles like that too. So what do you need to know? Software engineering is very useful because without an understanding of software engineering expertise, how can you give pragmatic suggestions to software engineering teams? You need to understand that to an increasing level of detail. Your software typically will run in the cloud. So you need to understand how the cloud works, the concepts, so that if there's a change from virtual machines to containers to compute as functions as a service, you're not surprised. It's all this. Certainly the implementations are a little bit different to secure, but you should understand that. That includes lots of understanding of system administration, networking too. Security is, well, we all have not a lot of authority. We often cannot block releases to production. We can pretend we have that authority, and sometimes it works, but usually we don't. So we have to influence others. And management skills and soft skills, how to tell compelling stories and keep people interested, it's really important. Practice that. Compliance, obviously, too. Depends a little bit on the role. I have to understand how the risk management organization works. And without security, we wouldn't have product security after all. Don't need to tell you more about that. One of the most common questions my mentees ask is, what should I work on? And I brought this illustration here that compares an output-oriented team, which says, I hit my target of 50 errors a minute. And in security, I could say I hit my target of doing 50 threat models a year. And it's awesome, isn't it? 50 sounds pretty solid. Spent a lot of work and time on that. But an outcome-oriented team is, I had an actual business goal. So figure that out. By doing 50 threat models, did you maybe remediate the top, make sure that the top 1, 2, or 3 security risks have been remediated and worked in depth with the teams to get that done? Have you actually reduced the risk across the organization? That is outcome and impact oriented. And the first step is there's always too much work. We heard in yesterday's keynote that burnout is common in security too. And you can't learn all the things. You can't fix all the things. So my recommendation is consciously decide what you want to drop and work on the other stuff. And there are a couple areas that are especially interesting to invest in. You can increase risk visibility by understanding where are all the vulnerabilities. But that just means you now know about them. Stronger is you reduce risks. You make sure that vulnerabilities get quickly remediated, patched, whatever it takes. But even better, but insanely hard once you work at an enterprise scale, is fixing root causes of risks. Trusted scripting is the root cause is basically developers doing string concatenation without proper output encoding. How can you fix it at scale? Again, secure by design libraries and frameworks. Can you shift down security risks into platform teams by making sure platform teams and engineering teams have a shared responsibility so that the product engineering teams have to do less work? If you don't know yet what to work on, and this is a problem I had too when I was a senior and tried to figure out, well, how do I actually work across the organization? Always build shared understanding with your manager. And while you're building perspective to understand what to work on, a great fallback is work on things that will make your manager great. Usually, at least in good companies, if your manager looks good, that will have also a positive outcome eventually for you. If not, well, you know what to do. So how can you get towards a staff plus promotion? The first thing is you need to build feedback cycles for yourself. You need to become your own critic. Be a little bit careful with that. You can go too far with it. I know that sometimes I feel, what I'm doing doesn't have enough impact, and it's not good enough because I'm not driving enough change. But at least be aware of the quality of work you deliver. Be mindful about it. Sometimes you need to rush things to get something out the door to your manager or to a team so that they can keep moving. And sometimes you need to deliver the best work you can. Be very mindful about that. Work with your manager to get coaching, because they will have an opinion for what it will take you to get to stuff. And feedback from peers is very important too, but be aware that it will dry up. So you really need to be your own critic. It's really important. And write it down, what cool stuff you did. Write down if other people in the organization, especially outside your direct line of management, said you did great work. Build a promotion package. And today I'm skipping over the details because other folks have written that down excellently. The QR code will take you to Will Larson's online version of his book, Staff Engineering. And there's so much valuable stuff in there. Go get that book, read it if you are already a senior level. If you're below, it's too early. Wait until senior. And you need to manage expectations with your manager. Many of my mentees come to me with the challenge that they don't get promoted quickly enough. That's very common. And they all want to get a time by when they can be promoted, but it doesn't work like that way. So what I instead recommend is focus on with your manager on when are you going to be ready? What does it take for your manager to consider you for promotion at all? And you can agree on specific milestones. And then once you've met these, you unfortunately just have to wait. There may be business reasons. Maybe there's nobody needed to fill the role of a staff or a principal. Especially if your organization is small, there are very, very few of these roles available. Maybe there's another person in front of you that first gets a shot. Or maybe they want to hire somebody from outside because they believe they need fresh understanding of the problem and a new perspective and new ideas that an internal person maybe cannot provide. There can be any number of reasons. So really focus on getting ready. And then there's jumping through hoops, which your manager will call, you need to have more visibility for me to promote you. So that works like this. Many managers, unfortunately, don't know what they mean when they ask somebody to gain more visibility. So I'll explain it to you so that you can, if your manager doesn't know it, you can tell them too. This is an org chart. You are down there in the middle. You report to a manager, reports to a director, and you have peers next to you. And if you're at senior level, you'd certainly influence what these people do, influence their thinking, how decide what to work on and stuff like that. But there's lots of other people in your organization. You have a VP up there, you have a staff plus engineer to the side, you have another director, maybe many other directors with multiple managers, and I didn't have enough space on this slide, and many, many other peers. If your organization is really big, there's probably a bunch of other VPs and security too, and certainly you have VPs and product. And at Staff Plus, your influence level sphere looks like this. It's for sure weirdly shaped, and you work really across the organization to get work done. So how can you get a promotion? First, your manager is your sponsor. You have to work with your manager to figure out what kind of cross-organizational work can I do? What is necessary? You have to ask for time to do this work because doing it on top of your existing work isn't going to do. So you need a fraction of your existing time to work on that. Then you figure out how to work with a director or with the directors or managers that report to people who decide about your promotion. So in this example here, let's say you want a Staff Plus promotion, then it's probably the purple and the blue directors that will be asked, can we promote this person to director? And if they all say, well, I don't know what he or she is working on, well, you won't get the promotion, as simple as that. But if you've worked with their management chain on any level below them, I'm sure they will ask their reports, and the reports will again ask their reports, have they worked with you? And if they say, yes, this person is great to work with, they helped us deliver this product to production in a more secure fashion, something like that, then they can approve, the directors can approve and endorse your promotion. That's how it works. At principal level, it really depends on the company. My own company at Adobe, it's promotion by committee. There's a central group with a bunch of SVPs and our CEO who decide who gets promoted to principal. So my manager, my VP back then figured out who sits in that committee, and I was given work to work across some of these organizations so that I could gain the visibility I needed for the promotion. You can be very tactical about that. To understand how that exactly works, it's best if you can find a mentor in your organization. I can only give you general advice. Another cool thing about this approach is, that's, by the way, exactly how you drive change as a staff or a principal engineer across the organization. You work from the bottom, you influence people once you've aligned the bottom on whatever you want to achieve. You work from the top down and align them and into agreement on what you want to do is good, and then you just need to figure out how to finance it. That's still tricky, but much easier because you have already agreement that what you want is desirable even if it's expensive. Now let's say you've been promoted to staff or maybe even principal. Congratulations. You've got a bunch of new challenges. As a senior, you've been the person who did all the work, who made the technical decisions. And I had that too. And my first challenge was, how can I empower my former team to make decisions without me? And my own, in this case, my promotion to principal was actually blocked by this because I couldn't let go. I still wanted to make decisions. Instead, I needed to learn how to delegate this, how to encourage people by asking guiding questions and things like that. And only once I was able to do that and demonstrated it to my boss, she was willing to promote me to principal. You'll have to figure this out too. Especially when you become a principal or distinguished engineer, you are in the top few percent. Principal title gets you in the top 2.5%, maybe 3% of all engineers across Adobe. It's probably similar at other companies, even though the names may vary. So your title carries a lot of authority. Feedback will dry up. They won't tell you if you get it wrong because they think, well, this is obviously wrong, but he or she must have a reason to do it anyway. People will come less often to you. You will have to actively do outreach to people to figure out what's this missing feedback and missing communication sometimes. It's meaning, and it depends a whole lot on your culture. I still need to get better at it. I'm still learning that, so I can't give you the exact patterns you can apply in the situation. If you know them, let me know. I'd love to learn too. Another challenge is success can feel very distant. I'm working on efforts that do not span quarters anymore, but years. Well, memory safety is probably a decade plus effort. And then feedback can feel slow, even if in reality it's moving at an adequate pace. Progress can feel very, very slow. It takes forever to drive change across an entire end. There are so many people and organizations to align, so much commitment you have together, and it just takes a long time to get into agreement. There's a trap here. You may start working on things that your teams should be solving, because it gives you, again, this dopamine hit that I saw something today. I actually did something instead of just talking to people again and nothing happening. But be wary of that trap. Figure out how to avoid it, how to keep your motivation, even if things take seemingly forever. In reality, probably things are moving. Sometimes all it takes is your boss saying, oh, you actually do great work. So make sure you get positive encouragement once in a while if that's what you need, or whatever else you need. And the biggest challenge of all is there are no clearly right solutions anymore. It's all a multidimensional trade-off. There are situations when all options are bad. Supply chain security is a good example. I can't have my teams review all their third-party dependencies. We use hundreds of thousands of them. Nobody can do that. Implementing choke points to do that is difficult too. It has a high cost to get there. How do you balance these things? You need to develop a gut feeling and then confidently defend your position and advertise it. It's lots of marketing and sell it that it's the right solution, even if you are a little bit unsure about it. You should still get it right, directionally at least. And sometimes it can take years until you get the feedback if it goes right, but watch for these situations. So let's wrap things up. I presented to you a toolkit. I covered really a lot of things, from how to write better resumes, how to ace the technical interview. We barely scratched the surface of some of these things. How to grow your career, how to get the staff plus promotion, how to drive change, and what new challenges you face at the staff or principal level. And unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. This is decades worth of effort. So there's an important thing that you have to do. And just like John in yesterday's keynote, do what feels easy to you. I'm telling you, just follow your curiosity. It doesn't really matter what you work on. pick a thing, master your craft, get really good at it. And once you're really deep and deeply understand this thing, and you've lost interest, or if not, just continue until you lose interest, eventually move on, learn something new, get broad, get really good at learning, become the specializing generalist that I've talked about. Repeat, repeat, repeat. If you do that long enough, your knowledge will accumulate. You will become an irresistible hire that companies will fight for to get you. So, what's your next step? Thank you. We've got about 13 minutes for questions. If you have some now, otherwise I'll be waiting outside and can answer questions one-on-one too.
Especially looking at it from senior to staff. What was the biggest challenge in learning how to direct, and how did you work?
So the question is, what was the biggest challenge when I moved from senior to staff to principal? And I skipped staff level entirely. I went straight to principal. And the biggest challenge was really letting go of the technical decision making. I still wanted to make the technical decisions because I was really damn good at it. Still good, but so I figuring out how to carefully nudge and guide people to the right solution. And you now have a completely different job. And it took me a full year to truly figure this out. And there are a couple patterns that I noticed that are useful. You have to learn how to build trust with people. And trust comes by you directionally being right all the time, which is hard. But there are tricks to this too. Read the Staff Engineer book. It has a great section about it. The other thing is be useful to your teams. As staff, within 6 to 12 months, you will get broad enough so that you build up perspective across your security organization, or at least a part of it. And then you can tell them what is happening in other parts of the organization. Have one-on-one conversations with the remaining senior or most senior engineer and the manager of the team. Be really a resource to them that helps them get their work done more effectively or efficiently. That builds trust. If you can repeat that often enough, they'll be open to challenging discussions. And then you've nailed it, eventually. It will take time. You'll make mistakes, horrible mistakes. You'll burn bridges. Get good at fixing them.
I'll leave it. So let's say good. Buying others. I ask feedback, like restaurant reviews, right? You know, I give feedback, I can explain it. Just like that. Then they let me good. It's like, oh, yeah, good.
Yeah, so the question is, how do I ask for feedback? Because it dries up, and he also said he doesn't get any feedback anymore. Yeah, there are a couple of things. I ask for feedback from more senior folks, especially from the managers and directors in my organization. I ask for a lot of feedback. I ask feedback from my peer principals, who are all similarly shaped like me, surprisingly deep, surprisingly broad, and they see me interact with other people too. I ask for feedback from people who are not close to my management chain. I work also with product board, and these people don't have anything to gain by telling me I'm not doing well. Yeah, I'm doing well. It's just better for the working relationship. So asking that, giving it permission. I make myself intentionally vulnerable. When I initially prepared this talk, I shared this slide deck with the entire organization and asked for people, please come join me in a meeting and my only expectation is that you give me brutally honest feedback. And I use exactly these words, give me brutally honest feedback. I give you permission to do that, and that helps.
One of your slides about how to get that job, get that interview, get that certification from. Just tell me more about how you did it.
Yeah. So the question is, why did I have certification crossed out for university graduates to stand out? Certifications cost a whole lot of money. And if you're a university graduate, you're probably short on money. And I'd rather have that you don't have two papers, your graduation as a bachelor's, master's, plus whatever certification you got, but that you can demonstrate hands-on experience. That's really, really important to me. If you are a software engineer and you have trouble finding a job in security, a certification may indeed be the one thing to convince a hiring manager or probably the HR team to get you to the hiring manager to then get the job. So it depends, unfortunately. All right. Thank you, everyone. I'll be waiting outside.